All right, got this Matrix here. It's got the 2ZR-FE 1.8 liter VVTi engine that Toyota makes. They put it in the Corolla Matrix 5, a bunch of other vehicles as well in Europe and Japan. So I just want to show you one major place that leaks on here is the chain tensioner, your timing chain tensioner cover that's built. The cover is part of the tensioner. Looks like this. So this thing will be bolted onto the engine there, and you'll notice there'll be two 10mm nuts that are on here, and oil will be leaking out of there. It's a really common spot to leak on these things, and they're fairly simple to fix. So I've already pulled this out, but I'm going to show you the steps that you need to do before you pull this thing out, and the steps are pretty important. Now this, like, the job of this thing is to keep tension on a guide that pushes to keep the chain tight around all the engine components, the crankshaft and the camshaft. And what we need to do is set the timing to top dead center on cylinder 1 before we pull this thing out. So I'm gonna lower the car down and I'll show you what we gotta do to do that. Okay, so looking down in here, we're looking at the crankshaft harmonic balancer. And you can see there's a little white dot and there's a notch out of that harmonic balancer, and that needs to get lined up with the 0 on that little tab that's part of the front cover. You can see there's a 10 and then a center notch and then a 0. So line that up with the 0. And I've also pulled out the ignition coil and the spark plug, and I just use a coat hanger to feel for top dead center. But yeah, just line that stuff up. And in order to get down there to do that, it's easiest if you just remove this plastic shield. So there is two 10mm bolts and then a couple clips, these push pins. So it basically underneath of the car wraps around like this. So you take that hardware out, remove the shield, gives you access to the crankshaft bolt itself, which is a 19mm. And then I just use a big ratchet with a socket, and I'll bar the engine over in the clockwise rotation until that mark lines up. And that, once we get that lined up, that takes all the tension of the engine where the camshaft lobes are pressed on the valves and all that stuff. It eliminates that, so that when we pull the timing chain tensioner out, the chain doesn't jump. Not saying it will jump, but it would suck if it did, because then you're pretty much into like a teardown scenario. If you do engines at a time, either not gonna run right, not run at all, or worst case scenario, you just damage something in the engine and you're not having a good day. So we got that set. Then once that's set, you can actually go underneath, remove those two 10mm nuts that I was showing you, and you do them one at a time, like work your way back and forth, and then the tensioner is going to want to push itself out. So if you just do one, then it sort of puts pressure on the tensioner on an angle. So I just do them back and forth until the thing comes out. Don't drop it. You could replace it if you want, but I'm just going to reuse it. There is a small thin metal gasket, and if yours is like rusty and crappy, then I'd probably recommend replacing it. I'm sure it's not that much, but we're just going to clean it up and put a small amount of silicone on there and stuff it back in. So I've got the area sort of prepped as far as washed all the oil off, wiped the surface down, the sealing surface, and then set the tensioner, because it's a ratcheting tensioner, spring loaded. So I'll show you in a second how to do that. Okay, so here's the gasket. Now just be careful, it likes to get stuck. It sits in there like so. It likes to get stuck. So if you're gonna reuse it, just sort of use a flathead screwdriver. Be nice, don't scratch the surface, but work your way around until it comes off. It will bend, so be careful. And then, now this is preloaded. I've already ratcheted it back down. But you can see we've got this little claw, this black claw that hooks over that peg that's sticking out. That keeps it loaded. And we've got this little arm right here that has teeth on it. So this plunger piece has a bunch of teeth on it as well. So that's how the ratcheting mechanism works. It goes out, but it doesn't want to go back in. So what you got to do is use a small flathead screwdriver or something like that to pivot this piece kind of backwards like so, but it needs to be in just the right spot where the teeth on both the plunger and the latch don't grab each other. And then you can push it back in and then flip that little latch over and latch it. There's a very finite space between them, so it does work like that. You just have to get it right in the sweet spot. And the spring is not too excessive to push back. Like, you can do it with one hand if your hand's strong enough. So there's also oil that goes into this cavity that's inside of here as well. So when you push that plunger back in, it will bleed a bunch of oil out. So that's pretty much it. We're going to clean this up, and I'm going to throw some silicone on here, and we're ready to stick it back into the hole. Okay. Okay, so it goes in like this basically. So this is going to be facing upwards. That's about it. This recessed section that runs around here is actually like an oil channel, and there's a small hole located on, I guess it would be, well, the whole thing's part of the front cover, but towards the outside of the engine on the side that you're on. So just gonna try to stick this thing in here. Now, it's an automatic tensioner, so the way this thing works is when it gets pressed against, that latch falls off, and then the spring takes over and pushes the ratcheting plunger out into the guide. So we'll get this thing tightened down, and then basically what's going to happen is we're going to rotate the engine over, and the guide, it should, when we tighten it down, hopefully we'll push up against it enough that the latch can fall off, and then it will ratchet itself out. We'll turn the engine over a bunch so that happens. Since I've done one of these. All right, so that's in there and tightened down. They're just little 10mm nuts, so don't like crank them down extremely tight. You might break them. Now we're ready to spin this engine over. I like to do it by hand for a few revolutions, just to, I don't know why, I just feel like it's safer. You could hear the ratcheting when I initially got there. I don't know. So that's all I listen for, is that ratcheting noise. And then after I rotate the engine around like 10 times, I'll fire it up, and should pretty much be it. You heard it like ratchet some more when it initially fired up, and as soon as it fires, there's a lot of tension on the chain. The chain wants to like move, right? So it really ratchets in place, and that's all there is to it. So that's pretty much it for the video. Obviously, we'll put the shields and stuff back on it, but if you have any questions, throw them in the comment section below, and give the video a thumbs up if it helps you. Subscribe for more content, and we'll see you in the next one.